What if I told you the common man, the backbone of society, once rose against the tyranny of their rulers, sparking a revolt that shook the very foundations of medieval England? This is not a tale from a fantasy novel, but a chapter from our own world history, the Peasants' Revolt of 1381. Let's set the stage. The 14th century was a tumultuous time for England. The kingdom was in the throes of socio-political unrest, with the common people bearing the brunt of oppressive policies. The poll tax, a levy that demanded the same amount from every adult regardless of their wealth or social status, was one such policy. It was a heavy burden on the common folk who were already struggling to make ends meet. The situation was further exacerbated by the Black Death, a devastating pandemic that swept across Europe in the mid-14th century. The plague was no respecter of persons. It took the lives of both the rich and the poor, but its impact on the working class was particularly severe. With a significant portion of the population wiped out, England faced a severe labour shortage. The demand for labourers skyrocketed, but the wages did not. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. These factors created a perfect storm of discontent among the peasantry. As the tax collectors went from door to door, the commoners began to question the justice of their lot. They started to whisper in hushed tones, sharing their grievances and dreams of a better life. These whispers soon grew into a roar of defiance. A storm was brewing, the commoners were restless, and the stage was set for one of the most significant uprisings in history. Stay with us as we delve deeper into this fascinating chapter of the past, exploring the events that led to the Peasants' Revolt, its impact on medieval England, and the lessons we can learn from it today. Imagine the tension, the seething anger, as the peasants, driven to desperation, decided to take matters into their own hands. The Peasants' Revolt, as it would later be known, didn't just spring up overnight. It was the result of years of oppression and hardship. And when the breaking point came, it started in the counties of Essex and Kent. In Essex, the seeds of rebellion were sown. The common folk, tired of their grievances falling on deaf ears, decided to act. The peasants, who had been suffering under heavy taxation and serfdom, had had enough. The spark was lit, and the fire of revolt started to spread. Meanwhile, in Kent, a man named Wat Tyler rose to prominence. An ex-soldier and a charismatic leader, Tyler was the beacon the people needed. He rallied the masses, his words igniting a flame in their hearts. They saw in him a figure who could lead them towards a better future, where they would no longer be mere cogs in the wheel, but individuals of worth. And then there was John Ball, a radical preacher who dared to challenge the status quo. His sermons, filled with visions of equality and social justice, resonated with the suffering peasants. He urged them to stand up for their rights, to demand a fairer system. John Ball's words were the rallying cry that the people needed to rise against their oppressors. Jack Straw, another leader in this uprising, was a man of the people. He was one of them, a peasant who knew their struggles firsthand. His leadership gave the peasants the courage to demand justice and equality. As the uprising began, these three men, Wat Tyler, John Ball, and Jack Straw, became the faces of the revolt. They led the charge, giving voice to the demands of the peasants and inspiring them to fight for a better future. The revolt was now in full swing. The leaders were determined, the peasants were furious, and there was no turning back. As the revolt gained momentum, the rebels marched towards London, the seat of power, with a resolve that struck fear in the heart of the ruling class. The peasants, driven by desperation and a yearning for justice, found themselves on the precipice of a historic confrontation. London, the jewel of the realm, was now in their sights. With the city walls looming in the distance, the rebels knew the time had come to make their stand. Their journey had been arduous, their sacrifices many, but the sight of the city, the embodiment of their oppression, reignited their resolve. As they approached the city, their numbers swelled. Word of their cause spread like wildfire, attracting support from all walks of life. The revolt was no longer a peasants' rebellion, but a people's revolt. The storming of the Tower of London was a sight to behold. This was not just an attack on a building, but on the very symbol of the ruling class. The peasants, armed with nothing more than their conviction, stormed the fortress, tearing down its gates and laying siege to its inhabitants. In the heart of the chaos, Simon Sudbury, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and the embodiment of the Church's corruption, was seized. His pleas fell on deaf ears, as the rebels, driven by fury and a thirst for justice, executed him. His death was a clear message to the ruling class. The oppressed had risen. The revolt had reached its zenith. The peasants had stormed the castle, claimed their vengeance, and shaken the foundations of the ruling class. It was a symbol of their fury, a testament to their resolve, and a warning to their oppressors. The peasants had made their mark, their fury was felt, and the ruling class was forced to take notice. The revolt had reached London, and it was clear that nothing would ever be the same again. Every uprising has its climax, and for the Peasants' Revolt, it was a meeting that would change the course of history. In the heart of Smithfield, a fateful encounter was to unfold. King Richard II, a boy of merely 14, came face to face with the leader of the rebellion, Wat Tyler. The air was thick with tension, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on the shoulders of those present. Tyler, a man with a fire in his eyes and determination etched on his face, put forth the demands of the rebels. He spoke of fairer treatment, of equal rights, and an end to serfdom. He embodied the hopes and desires of the oppressed, giving voice to their shared frustrations and dreams. But the meeting took a treacherous turn. A scuffle broke out, and in the midst of the chaos, Wat Tyler was fatally wounded by the Mayor of London, William Walworth. It was a shocking turn of events, a brutal betrayal that would mark the beginning of the end of the revolt. With the death of their leader, the spirit of the rebels waned. King Richard, seizing the opportunity, addressed the crowd. He promised reforms, pledged to meet their demands, and in an act of shrewd political maneuvering, claimed to be their true leader. The crowd, in shock and despair, dispersed, and the revolt that had once seemed so promising began to crumble. In the days that followed, the king's promises proved empty. The nobility reasserted their power. The rebels were hunted down and punished, and the status quo was mercilessly restored. The dream of a better life, of a fairer England, was crushed under the weight of the crown. And thus, the revolt ended, not with a bang, but with a whimper, leaving behind a legacy that would shape the future of England. In the ashes of the Peasants' Revolt, what did we learn? What legacy did it leave behind? In the aftermath of this monumental uprising, the repercussions were felt far and wide. The revolt, a stark demonstration of the common man's power, rattled the foundations of the feudal system, an institution that had held sway over England for centuries. The king's response to the revolt was swift and brutal. The leaders of the rebellion were hunted down and executed, their bodies displayed as a dire warning to any who might dare to challenge the status quo. Yet despite the harsh reprisals, the revolt had managed to shake the confidence of the ruling class. The feudal lords, once secure in their power, were now acutely aware of their vulnerability. They were forced to recognize that the common man, when pushed to the brink, was capable of rising up in defiance. This realization led to changes in the feudal system. The lords began to rely less on forced labor and more on paid workers. This shift, albeit gradual, marked the beginning of the end for the feudal system in England. It was a significant step towards the economic system we know today, but perhaps the most important legacy of the Peasants' Revolt is the lesson it taught us about the power of the common man. The peasants, who had long been dismissed as powerless and insignificant, had managed to bring London, the heart of the kingdom, to its knees. They had shown that they were not merely subjects to be ruled over, but individuals with voices that demanded to be heard. This revolt, born out of desperation and fueled by injustice, was a testament to the enduring human spirit. It was a powerful reminder that no matter how oppressed, no matter how downtrodden, people have the capacity to rise up and demand better. The Peasants' Revolt may have ended in defeat, but its spirit lives on, reminding us that even the most oppressed can rise against injustice.